temples like Srirangam, which is the town itself being a complete temple. Yeah, the temple being the town and the town being the temple. This is certainly one of the most unique of the examples that you can ever take up for a case study. So here you have the case where entire town is associated with the temple. Yeah. So the 7 concentric prakaras and the population then as it was, all of them had some role to play in the development, administration, maintenance or services in the temple. So each of the service in fact had a deputed parcel of land and income from which has got to go in as their remuneration annually. So here in this case, around the 15th century, post Vijayanagara rule being set up after the invasion, we had Veerakampanna Udayar, who was the man behind ensuring that the rule of Dharma gets re-established in south of India, especially in Tamil Nadu, starting from Kanchipuram all the way down south till Madurai, in all the major cities, in all major temple towns, and likewise in every single village. Now an inscription from the 15th century. Yeah, this was the time when the imperial Chola legacy comes to a close, had already gone down, and the later Pandyas ruled for a period, and that was the time when the Hoysalas were active too. But around the 14th century, where not once, but within a span of 50 years, 2 massive invasions from Delhi showed the very foundation of the temple-based lifestyle that was happening active right here in south of India. So after these invasions, we had the rise of the Vijayanagara kings. Yeah, so it was quite a challenge on them to reset the complete structure, the societal structure, to bring it back to what it was 60, 70 years or a century back, and ensuring that the temples with all their activities flourished the same way that they were. Why did they concentrate so much on the temple? Simply, the temple had majority of the population engaged in one way or the other. Especially in small towns and villages, the temple was the center of administration for the entire village, and majority of the population cutting across the society, various occupation, people practicing different occupations, each had a connect with the temple. Yeah. So here, starting from the learned scholars, priests, musicians, dancers, tailors, potters, whatnot, just name it, goldsmith, blacksmith, stonesmith, architects, artists who were into painting and sculpture, all of them in one way or the other were associated with the temple. So each of the temple provided job opportunity to the local public too. So in order to ensure that the tradition continues, how did they manage to meet out occasions where there were challenges? So this is the case from 15th century, 1400s, when the Vijayanagara rule has just set up. So mostly endowments were created by whoever could. When I say endowments, an endowment might be as simple as offering a handful of cooked rice to the deity on a day-to-day basis, or an annual grand celebration of a festival which involved a lot of people and money and all that. Yeah, so it varies. The scale of endowment varies, but an endowment is an endowment. And in most cases, in fact, in almost all cases, these endowments were looked upon to be perennial. Yeah, till the sun and the moon last, they ensured that a deposit worthy of fetching interest for eternity was made in the temple, to the temple coffers. The temple in turn will definitely deposit that gold or land in a way that it can fetch the deputed interest money, and they could continue with the temple services. So that was the most traditional way of administering temple. The temples will have an administrative unit with people who were into religion, who were into administration, people, of course, who were with proven credentials to administer the various endowments that were created. For temples like Srirangam, which is the town itself being a complete temple, Yeah, the temple being the town and the town being the temple. It's a very, very unique example in amongst all the thousands of temples in India. This is certainly lakhs of temples in India. This is certainly one of the most unique of the examples that you can ever take up for a case study. So here you have the case where entire town is associated with the temple. Yeah. So the 7 concentric prakaras and the population then as it was, all of them had some role to play in the development, administration, maintenance, or services in the temple. So each of the service, in fact, had a deputed parcel of land and income from which has got to go in as their remuneration annually. So here, in this case, around the 15th century, post Vijayanagara rule being set up after the invasion, we had Veerakampanna Udayar, who was the man behind ensuring that the rule of Dharma gets re-established in south of India, especially in Tamil Nadu, starting from Kanchipuram all the way down south till Madurai, in all the major cities, in all major temple towns, and likewise in every single village. So we actually owe a lot to Veerakampanna Udayar. So he managed to set up an administrative scheme wherein he identified Mahamandaleshwaras, a designation called as Mahamandaleshwara, who had a bifurcated parcel of the entire Vijayanagara kingdom, or a stipulated parcel of the Vijayanagara kingdom, which was governed by them. They were more like the local governors who were reporting to the Vijayanagara flag, and they were deputed to take care of that particular region. And in this case, we had an individual called Koneri Raya who was administering. Yeah, he was accepted by the Shaluva dynasty of the Vijayanagara rule around the 15th century to rule from in and around Trichy. So obviously, the administration of Srirangam temple town came directly under his power. So Koneri Raya is the name. So this gentleman was ruling in and around Trichy. So his was a governance at an urban level, at a town level. Now, at the temple level, there was a body that was functioning to take care of the endowments, to ensure that the rituals are performed time to time without any compromise. So that was there. For which the direct elder brother of the Shaluva king was appointed to take care of the administration. Now, there is some space based on the inscriptions of Koneri Raya to assume that he belonged to the local Chola dynasty, which has by then, of course, fallen out of focus. But the royal members were identified, and some branch of Chola administration was there in and around the Chola country. So probably Kampanna Udayar identified one such person with a proven past. So for him to take care of the administration of that zone. And so he was there. But at the temple administration level, a direct descendant from the family of the king himself was appointed. Now, this is the case of classical ego play, where the local administration, the urban administration at one level, was in a way connected to the temple administration. The temple administration was majorly independent, but definitely they would have had lands, agricultural lands, administration of which, though the ownership is with the temple administration, overall administration at a political, at a social level was with the district administration. This is exactly where the problem comes up. Now we talk about a lot of temple lands being dwindled, yeah. So we definitely will have to hold the temple administration as the people who are in charge of it. At the same time, another group of administration, the local administration, the village administration, has also got to be questioned, because without their knowledge, transferring the deed or transferring ownership of temple lands wouldn't have been made possible at all. So several departments are to be held responsible when it comes to identifying temple land property and retrieving them. So in this case, there was a classic play of ego between the district administration and the temple administration heads. And this paved way to meddling with the endowments from which regular calculated interest should be transferred to the temple fund. So it goes through from the land to the district administration, who in turn sends it over to the temple. Yeah, in many cases we see such things where more than one government department will be held responsible. So it has got to go through that protocol, and there will be a delay, there will be ego, there will be hierarchy issue between two functioning departments, both of which functions under the same government too. So the individual's ego here had a direct impact on the temple services. Yeah, so two heads have an issue, and the direct impact is on the daily offerings to be made to the deity, which in turn will be gifted to somebody engaged with the temple. Yeah, so in such case, that is where the problem comes up. And so here, there was a direct impact on the daily offerings to be made to the deity. While the heads wouldn't really take care of it, it did bother the religiously inclined. So the administrative setup of the temple engaged Jiyas or Acharyas who were sannyasis. Yeah, so they were engaged in maintenance of the temple agamic traditions. They were more interested in ensuring that the rituals go without any hindrance. Yeah, they are not bothered about who's behind it, whose ego is causing the trouble. That is not their take at all. Their only focus is on the deity, the temple, the rituals that has got to go in every day without any problem. So seeing this causing a hindrance to the temple administration, the temple activities, in this case at Srirangam, they try their best to communicate through proper channel and ensure that whatever has been stopped is brought to the temple. After multiple attempts that failed, they, without a choice, to ensure that the focus light shifts on the temple, because amidst a lot of other things happening at a district administration level, a single voice, the voice of a lonely Jiyer, wouldn't have probably been made much of a noise for them to immediately attend to. So, two Jiyers, and another individual called Alage Manavala Dasar, three of them, after repeated attempts which failed, managed to climb up the tall Vellai Kopuram, or the tall Gopuram that is always painted in white, probably as a symbol of sacrifice, climb up to the Gopuram. After multiple attempts that failed, managed to jump from the Gopuram and committed suicide. Yeah, their attempt, this was their final attempt. Probably the death of two sannyasis and an individual engaged in temple service, three individuals, three devout, would probably engage some higher level interference in this issue, and probably that would end up sorting the issue out. So their concern was ensuring that the temple activities goes smooth, and this is the best that they could do after multiple attempts of talks that failed. They sacrificed their life quite literally by jumping from the tall Vellai Kopuram, the east Gopuram of Srirangam temple, and gave up their life to bring in some focus. And this should have definitely brought in the heads from the Vijayanagara kingdom to attend to it immediately and probably to sort it out, because after this inscription, they are remembered for this sacrifice. So when you go to the Srirangam temple, in good probability, you will enter through the south entrance. Ask the local for this place called Vellai Kopuram. This is the east entrance. Literally translated, it means the Gopuram that is painted white. Of the 21 Gopurams in Srirangam of various sizes, the white, there is only one which will be painted white. That will be dominating the skyline, and this is on the eastern direction. So if you enter through the east Gopuram, as you pass through the threshold, on either sides, as you just walk beneath the Gopuram, on either sides, you will see the bas-relief image of two Jiyers, people holding on to a flagstaff, the Tridandam that you see in the picture, and one Acharya with a sickle in his hand, on either sides. They'll be facing the opposite direction. So these bas-reliefs are kept there, and their names along with their service has been etched on the temple wall. What happens when temple property is misappropriated? Now we saw a case where the administrators, one part of them were not functioning well and the other part gave up their life. But this is a case where people who were appointed by the king himself dwindled money. And how exactly was this attempted? This is from a temple called Tirunakeshwaram on the outskirts of Kumbakonam, a grand temple complex, and it is populated most of the times. And so this is from the times of Rajaraja III, the parent of the great Chola rule from 13th century. And this is from Tirunakeshwaram, a temple on the outskirts of Kumbakonam. Then, two brothers and another person were put up as accountants of the temple to maintain the temple account. So this is the story. And they were officially employed by the temple administration to be accountants to maintain the records. But they unfortunately ended up stealing temple properties, silk garments that were offered to the temple, and more interestingly, used the bricks procured for development of the temple to build a sannadhi in the temple to maintain and repair their own house. And the bricks bought for temple was used for their residence. So this is brought out as a complaint, and it was lodged with the royal high official called as Pillai Yadavarayan, who was working under Rajaraja III. Unfortunately for the accused, the king himself, when this case was being inquired upon, probably was on a travel and he has camped very close to Tirunakeshwaram. So this case, which would have gotten done with the help of local officials, unfortunate for the accused, was taken up by the king himself because he was camping very close by. And probably as he was discussing one fine evening, the person who was inquiring this case would have elaborated the story, and the king got himself involved into it. And very strict punishment was given. But before that, there was proper inquiry made. So the accounts were brought and checked. And the king was convinced that a mal play had happened there. So the accountants who were employed by the temple have misappropriated temple funds. So they have to be punished, and so they were convicted, and all their properties were confiscated. Properties that were believed to have been bought, purchased by stealing temple money, all of it was confiscated. And believe me, the temple will not take care of that property, because for all you know, that is from money which was stolen from the temple. So they sell it off to interested individuals, whoever wants to buy it. And for 40,000 kasu, this was bought, and that was deposited in the temple coffers. Interestingly, the accountancy rights, the designation, the appointment that was made was auctioned, and it was given to the best bidder for 3,000 kasu, or 3,000 coins, or 3,000 units of money. That was also deposited with the temple. The properties that they built by stealing bricks that were meant for the temple development were brought down, and that was brought down to the ground too. What you see in the picture is the bank, the shallow pond-like structure there. That's a dried-up lake, and you will have to walk. It's not a motorable road even now. You will have to walk your way through the mud road, the narrow path, literally on the banks of the lake, to reach that little shrine there that you see, the white-colored structure that you see sandwiched between two tall trees. That is the temple. This is in a place called Kalakkattu, very near Kanchipuram, from the times of Rajaraja I. In fact, this is from the 10th century, which will mean very soon after the king took up charge. This is a representation from the headman of this village called Kalakkattu on the banks of this lake, 10-20 kilometers from Kanchipuram. It says that he walked his way to Tanjavur to meet the king. And this headman, he's called as Kadan Maindan from the inscriptions. So he walks his way to Tanjavur to meet the king personally. All of this he took to request the king to permit the villagers to create an endowment for a perpetual lamp to be lit in the memory of the king, to pray for his longevity and and for his victory. So the subjects were so moved by the king that they made sure that they prayed for the longevity of the king. That is how benevolent Rajaraja was. So this Kadan Maindan, a certain Kadan Maindan, walks his way to Tanjavur, meets the king and requests him to permit that the villagers, out of their pocket money, set up an endowment to burn a perpetual lamp for the king as a prayer for the king's victory and longevity. But the king approached this request in a very different way. He said, "Thank you for coming all the way from Kanchipuram to meet me and to request this permission to pray for my longevity and victories. But to me, my subjects matter the most. So let me create an endowment in my name and ensure that is made as a prayer to the welfare of my people and my kingdom." Instead of praying for me, it is the kingdom and the people who are to be prayed upon for. So he says, please take my endowment to be set up in that temple to burn a perpetual lamp for the betterment, for the success, for the healthy life of my people and my kingdom. Kadan Maindan, pretty convinced, comes back to the village, but he ends up setting up an endowment to burn 2 perpetual lamps. One as wished by the king for the longevity, for the success of Chola kingdom and all its citizens, that is by the king. And Kadan Maindan ends up creating an endowment from his pocket money, not as a representative from the village. He ends up creating an endowment from his money for the longevity of such benevolent king who always thinks about his subjects, his people, and his kingdom. This almost forgotten temple is a 10th century classic, I would say, It has some of the finest Kota sculptures from classic Chola period, and that is how the temple looks today. Unfortunately, the inscription also was whitewashed, and thankfully, a bunch of youngsters have managed to scientifically clear the whitewash done on the walls of the temple and have managed to retrieve the name of Garden Maindan. We don't know how he looked like. We don't know what his age was when he did all this. But that name has got to be remembered for long. Somebody who wished that the king lives long, such a benevolent king lives long. And in turn, a king who proved his benevolency by telling, my people means most to me, so pray for them as an endowment from me. And we have this Garden Maindan, who in turn also prayed for the king. So two lamps were set up as an endowment, two perpetual lamps, one for the king and other for the people. So this is in a place called Kalakkattu, and the deity is called as Agneeshwarar in outskirts of Kanchipuram on your way to Uttarameru from Kanchipuram.